Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Craft Beer and Data. My name is Nick Piette, Chief Evangelist here at Talend.
I'm Mark Balkenende, Director of Technical Product Marketing here at Talend.
And then we have Gabe from Twisted Pine Brewery, which is where we're at today. So Gabe, tell us a little about this place, right? So Mark's been here before. I'm just got a highlight right now.
Before you start,
that's what
Gabe.
he picks. Yeah, before you start, Gabe. Everyone take note of that.
It's a pumpkin spice beer, and it comes with whipped cream if so chosen. So my pumpkin pie beer came with whipped cream on. I couldn't pass it up.
Nope.
Thank you, Nick.
Clearly, no problem. So yeah, it's okay. Now we called you out. Tell us a little bit about Twisted Pine.
Well, we're a little brew pub here in Boulder. We do a little less than 1,000 barrels a year. We pride ourselves on having a huge variety. We've got 24 taps. If you just look at the beers in front of you, we've got some weird stuff. We've got some pretty standard stuff. We like to make unique beers. We like to be
very cool.
One of the out there breweries sometimes.
Right. So how did Twisted Pine start? Right. It's an interesting history as I was kind of reviewing. One of the real big brewers of the day kind of started it and sold it, and you guys kind of merged. So what's the history of Twisted Pine?
Yeah, Twisted Pine actually goes back to 1995 with Gordon Knight, one of the local beer legends in the Denver Boulder area, and our current owner Bob Bale purchased it from him. We've been in this location since 2003. At one time, as recently as a year and a half ago, where we're sitting now, our event space was the packaging hall.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
For a number of years there, they were packaging and distributing right here, and about a year and a half ago, Bob and probably Wilson, the general manager, and whoever else was on board at the time, said, let's take a big step back. Let's just be right here. Let's be a brew pub.
Awesome.
Let's make less beer.
Well, let's make
it
good
better.
Beer, right?
Yeah.
So
awesome.
On that beer task, how do you guys decide what type of beer to make? What's the decision process? I mean, I've got everything from kind of Raspberry Rising to Billy's Chili's here on my tab. So what it goes through that mindset of all right, we're gonna make this.
Well, many of those are staples. The raspberry beer, both of the chili beers. We've got Billy's Chili's. We didn't bring you out a glass of the Ghostface Killer, but we have it. You
she
can
mentioned
try it
it,
or they have, and it's one of these, and they haven't told us.
Yeah. The coffee beers, a couple of IPAs. Most of those, not quite half of our beers are staples.
Okay.
They're beers that we keep on tap all the time. Past that, it's part of it's seasonal. We release our North Star every November, December. The Imperial Stout or Imperial Porter. We've got some barrel releases coming out pretty soon. Also seasonal.
Okay.
We've got some more brown ales and things like that on right now.
I have a James Brown.
You do.
Looks very good. I can't wait to dig in.
You finished that PSL, right?
better than my pumpkin pie, hopefully.
But above and beyond that, it's just what sounds good. What can we make that's unique and delicious? One of these beers is a ginger sour saison, or a sour.
Yeah.
It's a kettle sour beer that we fermented with saison yeast and then finished not quite a pound of ginger per barrel. And
wow.
We just tapped it yesterday. It's a unique beer. It's something that sounded good to us. I work with the kitchen guys pretty regularly, and we have a lot of
back and
forth. Yeah, a lot of cross contamination.
So
it's a good way to make your beers.
So since you mentioned you had so many beers on tap,
cross pollination.
Yeah, cross. I get it. Which of the beers here is your favorite?
A lot of times it's whatever is freshest, whatever is new.
Just open. What are you drinking now?
Right now, I've got a Pilsner.
Okay.
I've got to go run some errands, and it's not quite time for an IPA. The Intercept IPA is one of my favorites. That's one of my go-tos.
Okay.
The Pilsner is a go-to. I'm going to drink a lot of the ginger, the sour ginger saison for the next couple weeks until we roll out our cherry sour.
Ooh, excellent.
That'll be a good one.
Cherry
Yeah.
sour.
A lot of it's what's new, what's freshest.
I think I know I'm getting Nick for Christmas.
There you go. There you go.
Cherry sours.
Oh, I appreciate it, Mark. All right. Mark, do you have more questions for him?
No, that's very good. Actually, you have award-winning beer on here. I don't think we mentioned
No,
yet.
that's true. Yeah. So Great American Beer Fest was just last October, right?
Yep.
And you guys came away with an award.
Yeah, we took silver medal in Session IPA
Yeah.
for our patio pounder.
Excellent, which is
It's-
on mine, and I will be enjoying that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'll do my big data chug on.
Oh, there you go.
It's a good one.
You should probably sip that. It's probably worth it.
It's
You got to teach you.
Pretty sure I can get another one, Nick.
That's a chuggable beer. It's not.
Yeah.
We don't encourage people to come in and chug our beer
I
necessarily.
don't either, but
It's a
but-
lower bitterness beer. It's
Ooh, all right.
but
it's about 4.5%, 4.7.
Okay.
Loads of late hop, loads of dry hopping. So
Nice.
it's really bright and fresh, and
excellent.
also not too mouth puckering or too boozy.
I don't encourage pounding beers either, but Nick always wants to try to beat me, so.
But pound is in the name
In the
of
name,
the beer.
so it seems
Right.
like a good one for it.
Yeah.
It's a good candidate, so thank you.
Yeah. Gabe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for talking to us today
My
about
pleasure.
the beers here.
Thanks for coming out.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that was a great conversation with Gabe, head brewer here at Twisted Pine. My name's Nick Piette,
I'm Mark Balkenende.
and let's continue on with another episode of Craft Beer and Data. Yeah, it has been a while, Mark. And
It has.
We were kind of talking about this before we started the show. We have been traveling, right?
Mostly you, Nick.
Yep.
Me a little bit.
Yeah, I know. And you sure like to call me out on social media. So if you're
I
following
do.
our Twitter accounts, then you probably have seen.
It's most fun.
It is.
Although I was just in California doing a live podcast, which was fun. With,
That's true.
With the tweet, with the Enterprise of the Week series, so that was fun. That was
Yeah.
a good time. So check me out there.
Yeah, that was good. We'll put it in the comment section of this one so that you can look at it as well. And certainly, it's always good to get the word out about the Craft Beer and Data series, as well as more like what enterprise data is going on.
I did mention it in there.
Good. Perfect. Perfect.
So hey, check us out there.
So today we wanted to talk about kind of the couple shifts in the industry, right? It's kind of on the same level as like Pepsi and Coke or IPAs and not IPAs, but really batch or
Versus
streaming, right? Versus or yeah.
Or real time, or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, or near real time. Because is it ever real time?
We'll
No,
get
it's
into
always
that.
near
right?
real time. I don't know.
Yeah. No,
But
but
first, Nick,
yes.
I know you had a big milkshake right before
Yes,
this.
I did. I know. I was not planning.
Excuses, but we must continue the big data beer chug. Yeah.
I know. If I haven't lost enough already, I might as well lose another. All right. So who's this going out to, Mark?
Well, where are you going next week, Nick? Should we get a shout out to our partners there?
Yeah. Yep. So I'm heading off to reInvent next week. So we'll give this shout out to Amazon and the AWS cloud. So
Excellent cloud series. Cheers. Don't think we need a judge for that one.
nope, we don't.
Do we need to pause the recording though?
Nope. Milkshake will be fine.
Awesome.
Ugh.
All right, so thank you, Twisted Pine, for hosting us today, and great beers in front of us. But let's get down to
Yeah,
the topic.
right,
The topic at hand.
Batch versus streaming.
Mm.
You know, I think at a high level, and we were kind of joking that back in your day,
Yeah, back when I started, when I got going in IT, and most of the stuff I did was all around batch analytics, batch updates to the operational systems that I was supporting, whether it was Siebel or other ODSs or data warehouses. It was batch was always good enough. The question was, do you need it hourly, daily, weekly, monthly? What do you
both ways uphill in the snow.
Yeah, both ways uphill without a computer.
Right,
So,
without a
typically. So that's I started out in that world, and some mid part of my career I started shifting over to working with real time data streams.
Yeah.
And, real message over middleware, or MOM as they call it. So
Yeah, well, and it's funny because you mentioned my approach, or where I kind of entered, was much more of that event-driven streaming type
Right.
architecture. So it'll be a fun conversation. I think that first let's preface this by both are still very utilized within the industry.
very relevant by all means.
Right, and I think we both have our opinions, and so we'll kind of talk about it. I think, but let's highlight just where I'm seeing one of the biggest shifts is more and more companies actually trying to take advantage of streaming. Now, you mentioned a very interesting part of that, which is real time. And what does it mean as you see my
Real time.
real time?
What does that mean, Nick? Tell me.
Right. Well, and I think
because often in back in the day when we started talking about real time, we're like, is it real time? No, it's like milliseconds later, so it's near real time.
Right.
Fine.
Well, and I think that's one of the big things that we often struggle with is that when I talk with a number of organizations, they're often saying, well, I want it real time. Well, what does real time mean to you? Well, I want it faster than it was before. Right?
What was it before?
Right, exactly.
Every hour, every 5 minutes? What do you want?
And I think to your point, it is not necessarily a conversation of real time, but near real time. Or rather, how much time from the event creation to the actual event processing.
What'd you say? Event?
Event creation.
Ah.
Right? Or data creation, if you will, to the processing time.
Which brings up another great topic is how do you do real time? And what's the trigger for the real time? Are you doing change data capture or CDC, or are you doing event driven change? So
so I think at this point many people are aware of a Lambda architecture, but if you're not, it's essentially recognizing that in enterprise there's a need for more kind of batch or schedule oriented pulls of data versus consumption of data in a more messaging flow.
Right. Well, Lambda architecture, which by the way nobody talks about anymore, but
it's all Kappa. I know it's all Kappa.
It's the marketing message has died, I think, on Lambda. But it's about what they call the fast processing versus the batch processing, and being able to do that in a single architecture, and being able to have your fast, what is the fast versus the batch and what's needed,
right?
And then sometimes those cross too, because now you can do micro batching within the streaming, so which is a whole other world to talk about. So
well, but
I think we're going to be here all day.
Oh, we might be here.
Better get more beer.
Yeah, we might need a couple more beers. But so let's take that apart in a couple of things that you kind of mentioned. First, the need for a batch layer and a speed layer, right? I think organizations can agree that yes, we need this, but what we've seen as actual trying to put that into production is it can sometimes be a nightmare in terms of just trying to manage and process that. So we joked that Lambda's dead, all hail Kappa, but it's essentially kind of realizing that everything can be going through kind of that messaging layer, the
Absolutely.
pipe layer, but then handling it in this kind of event-driven versus micro-batch, which I have my personal opinions on this, and which I really think everything is a micro-batch. We'll get into why I think that.
Nick doesn't think anything's really real time.
Right.
Everything's really just a micro batch.
Yeah.
Could be nanosecond batches, but
it's the truth. Well, and so if we look at it, prior to working at Talend, I spent a lot of time in the financial services sector, helping build trading applications and things like that. And what I found was even in the need of microsecond and nanosecond speeds, which isn't something that necessarily all enterprises need to deal with.
Very few,
right?
Actually,
in order to get that performance that you were looking for, you still had to batch. And let's think about this for a moment. Let's say that I had all of these beers, right, that were sitting here.
You had all of them, Nick?
All of these beers.
You wouldn't be sitting here.
Right,
anyway.
I know. I'd be on the floor. But let's say we had all these beers and they were sitting and they were ready for me to be consumed like they are now. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say I had to do more than just consume these beers. But I had to
Score them?
Yeah, maybe I need to score them. Maybe I want to talk to you about that. Maybe I want to go check to see the reviews online.
This is the award-winning one. Can you figure that out while you drink all of them?
Yeah, right. But in the sense of if I know I have all of this that I have to do, if I were to take each one and then go through that process, maybe I have to, right? Because how we kind of define it's a little more structured. But let's say that I have to do the same repetitive process over and over again. The time that it could take for me to get from this beer to this beer,
we don't have that much time.
Right, we don't have that much time. Nothing to do with there's some concerns with the consumption.
Your consumption speed is lower than maybe the consumption speed over here on this side of the room.
Right. But it's the idea that if I know I have all this data in my pipeline, I can, rather than going back and switching between my operating or the user space and kernel space, which is how computers really work, I can limit the number of calls, get a lot more data coming through, and then actually process it down pipe. Now, how that's generally then controlled is one of two ways. Either it's based on the number of messages or based on how long you wait, right? A time base.
Right.
And in reality, you really need both, right? I can sit there and say, look, I know what my high water mark is going to be, and it might be a second, which is what Spark Streaming kind of opens when you talk about the windowing. Or I could sit there and say, hey, I need 15, 20 events, and if I get those and I still have a minute, like that's how many messages I want to process. But what I don't want to have happen is sitting there for 10 seconds if that ninth message hasn't popped and I'm waiting for 10 messages, right? If I have it already, I might as well just start processing it.
So Nick, why can't I just batch it all up and run in a big, nice batch like I always used to?
Well,
I don't get it.
So if you have that much data, and I think it largely comes down to not necessarily when I'm going to pull it, but when I need to use it. So, even if we look at some of the batch reports that we used to do every night, what we're seeing is in the enterprises need to be a lot more agile in the decisions that were being made from that data, and so they need it intraday, right? I might need to pull it in the morning and the evening. A perfect example of this is working with a telecom company. They were trying to better understand how to balance their essentially their pipes based on what their customers were using. They never assumed that people were going to want to use Facebook on their phones, and so they weren't balancing it appropriately throughout the day. And so that when you start looking at some of these things that are having real customer impact, understanding the trends as they're happening within the day, and then being able to better allocate throughput because of that is something that's very critical.
Absolutely. Which one's the Big Shot? Is it that one?
That was the one I chugged. Not the Billy's Chili's. Oh yeah, grab your non-IPA.
No, this is the ginger one. You got to try that.
Okay.
I think you might like that.
All right.
I'm gonna steal your happy boy.
That's fine. You don't want to take the Billy's Chili's?
Mm-mm.
Oh. So, how do you see this? Where are you talking with a lot of customers? What are their challenges?
So, I come, with, again, kind of the batch history, but I also come, not quite the speed of transaction processing you needed. But, within my career, we did do a lot of message over middleware using, different queuing, the MQ series, and, putting queues in front of everything and doing, the real-time messaging through, what, I think they're still called ESBs, but enterprise service buses and the different integration patterns like that to really guarantee delivery, have near real time within seconds being able to update systems. And that's always been, a pretty, safe environment, a pretty established environment. It still is today. There's just, different ways of doing it,
right?
But it's the same technology. And, but now the real big thing, the thing that we see, especially now at Talend, it wasn't something I dealt with a lot in my career, but working with customers at Talend and working in with these big data platforms, or really where you have streaming IoTs, sensors and thousands of sensors sending terabytes and petabytes of data within hours to be able to crunch that. The old systems are failing. The old queuing system is failing, and so today you now have customers want not only a platform that can process across multiple clusters, but can stream and look at data across the clusters as well.
Yeah.
And then you have the birth of Kafka. One of the highest scaling and streaming queuing systems that's out there. It's very popular, used in almost all the streaming environments that are high volume. Mm-hmm. So they do have a fault tolerance and fail. They do say that they're very high fault tolerance. They may not be at the guaranteed persisted delivery that many of the old systems were or are today. But sometimes you're not in banking all the time. You don't need that guaranteed messaging. You need to have a very high throughput so you can see. Our customers want to track how many sensors are showing X, Y, Z, so they can flag a windmill going and exploding in 10 seconds, shut it down, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because that windmill costs $10 million just to repair the motor or whatever. Or a jet. One of our we have a customer that's one of the top airline companies in Europe and in the U.S., but that uses us to transfer and monitor data every time one of their 777s lands.
Yeah.
It downloads gigabytes of data, almost terabytes of data off one flight. To be able to process that very quickly, it is batch in some sense, but it's also they want to track it real time.
Well, and so you're bringing up the point, which is even in a stream, there is some level of batching, right? It has to happen. And even whether it's, I agree that even non-capital market use cases, which I've spent some time working on as well, it wasn't that they
non-capital ones?
Non-capital market, yeah. I only focus on the big ones. No, the non-capital market use cases, like just general messaging as you're talking about, right? If I have such a large volume of data, I can, and there's some benefit to having the scale that these big data environments provide. But
Absolutely.
one thing that brings up, though, is kind of a challenge within this, which is certain streams of data. Let's say that I'm looking not holistically across all of my 1,000 sensors or whatever,
Right.
100,000, but within a single sensor, I want to make sure that that data is processed somewhat in order so that I can maintain kind of the state changes.
So a correlation of messaging.
Yes, so there needs to be some level of stickiness between each message from a given publisher. But across the whole set of messages I'm coming in, it's okay to spread those out. I think that that's one of the big things that people need to think about when they start switching from a batch-oriented system to a streaming system is kind of two things. One, data doesn't come in order anymore.
No.
And
never.
two, because data doesn't come into order, the final downstream record, if you will, is malleable, right? It's almost kind of like concrete. It's not, do you want it fast drying concrete or do you want it slow drying? It's going to take a bit before you can
Depends on
realize.
the project, Mike.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But understanding that, hey, data's going to be coming out of order. It might not necessarily reflect the final state for maybe 10, 15 seconds after when I expected it to. That's still fine, right? I think that's
Absolutely.
a big concern.
Yeah, and so micro batching within streams has become pretty important too. So
Yep.
and then actually applying some of the simple machine learning algorithms against those micro batches even. So the next product offer is an example where I'm clicking on websites. They're not taking one click or one move from one page to another or viewing over one thing. They're going to take 10 of my clicks or 10 of my browsing movements in consideration before they consider that next recommendation. Same with like the sensor concept. You're going to take, you're not going to take the first, thing that comes from a sensor, the first warning of a vibration or a heat sensor or whatever for your sensors. You're going to take them together, and you may want to take them within 10 seconds or 20 seconds and figure out, are all these events together?
Right, what's the
is that the
correlative
prediction
nature?
of a bigger event that's about to happen? So having the ability to do that and having platforms that can do that today more readily available to the average enterprise, the average customer out there is huge. Because 10 years ago, only the big guys, the special guys were doing, with the really big, deep pockets and the awesome technologies could do it. Now, you can go out and get Spark and machine learning and, do different algorithms all on your own. You don't need to be an expert either.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's very easy to get an IoT device.
even I could do it.
Yeah. If it's got the internet signal, it could just push to Kinesis, subscribe off that.
Which is an Amazon high volume messaging queue like Kafka too. But for those that aren't familiar with Amazon's ecosystem and what Kinesis is, but
it's true. No, I mean you brought up a very interesting point that I like to highlight, which is oftentimes we see a lot of event-driven architectures trying to be used to act, react, and respond in those types of situations. And one of the big things you kind of brought up is like, what happens if this event may be out of order, but it indicates a bigger problem? One of the big challenges I see a lot of enterprises trying to solve is, for the event that just came in, was that the canary in the coal mine, or was it a red herring? Right? And
good analogy, Nick.
Yeah.
Totally, though.
I appreciate that. Every now and then I come up with a good one, Mark. My job relies on me to be able to do this, so thank you.
That's true.
I appreciate it.
That's true. That is part of your job. Not mine, but yours.
But it is the sense of, is this event that I've looked at? And as you kind of mentioned, so one of the cases I got to spend time with was an oil and gas company that was actually getting the data as they're drilling for oil, right? And so, that temperature sensor just spiked 15 degrees. Is that an indication that we just lit the oil field on fire, or is that just a malfunction within the device? Having that, not necessarily the micro batch, or at least the IntelliSense, if you will, to know that this next event could be out of order, out of sync, what's going on, and be able to look at it across its neighbors, not just the single event itself, is very important. If we even look at some other ways that other industries are trying to use, if we look at streaming, if you will, oftentimes a lot of people probably think of like Netflix, like streaming video data or things like that.
Spotify.
Yeah. And it's a really interesting case where even in some of the technologies that run into, like, they might try to take it frame by frame. And it was a funny story. I think it was one of the Vision APIs that's widely available. They inserted a picture of a tiger in a full video of a school, and the metadata that came back said there was a tiger, which made no sense, right? But it speaks to it's the understanding all of the variables at that point in time, not just an individual sliver. Now,
Absolutely.
some of that you do need still.
Absolutely. And the other thing too, and this is age-old problem, even before big data and the large volumes came along, was sometimes people try to take streaming technology to solve a batch problem.
Right.
And not every problem that you're trying to solve is a streaming problem.
Wait. Not everything's a
Real
screw?
time. No,
Not everything's a screw?
Nick, it's not.
Or a
So,
nail? Come on. I've got a hammer.
Because you were talking,
hammer.
you always have a hammer, Nick. But you were talking about the oil and gas company you're working with. There's another one that I've talked to, and about how they're using machine learning. Mm-hmm. And they're using machine learning to plot all the spots in a geographical area, land that they own, where they've drilled and not hit anything, or have hit things, to then help better predict where can they go the next time. Now that clearly is not a streaming case, right? Because how long does it take to drill a hole for oil? I don't know, but it's not real time.
Yeah, no, it's
going to take some time, right? Exactly. So when those holes are being punched in the ground, those can be plotted on a graph and later figure out, like, where's the next best place to hit oil? We hit oil here, not here, but here, maybe we go hit there.
Right.
And that's more, So again, it's always been that problem where, even back when, my early days at the pharma company I worked at, I would run into people trying to use some of the ESBs to do file processing. Why are you doing large file processing with your ESB technology? That's horrible. Yeah, it's really slow. No wonder, because it's not made to process a massive file. Right? It's made to process a small chunk of data at a time versus, hey, you have a large chunk of data that you don't really need to process immediately, then send it through here. If you do, you could still do batch in maybe a different environment like Spark.
And it speaks to what you were just talking about. The file represents everything that process needed to run within that event, if you will. The file was It's not you can split it apart into, like, I'm going to take the top, middle, and then I'm going to give it to 3 different people and figure out what's going on. But it talks to another key piece.
By the way, sometimes you can. If it's like a big XML or JSON file, you can send it.
If there's some higher...
But in this case, it was just batch files, and they're trying to process with an ESB, for God's sake.
Right, anyway. But it speaks to another architectural decision that you have to make, which is, when I look at the data that's coming through, how much of those individual messages, if you will, combine to really provide that insight, and can I actually split it apart, right? So
that's a very important part. So, if we do like a recap on just the technologies, you have the traditional batch ETL, if you want to call it that, data pipelines where you're just processing chunks of data. You may be doing more, predictive, reactive analytics. Then you have real-time data or near real-time streaming data, however you want to call it, that you can handle with your traditional ESB and message over middleware technologies, with your queues and things like that are more guaranteed. Use those for like the capital or non-capital
and transaction-based
systems. You have now the large-scale, clustering queue systems like Kafka that handle your very large volume, very fast throughput scenarios in your Hadoop and Spark and whatever Flink, whatever you want to use systems to do the very large volume. So I hope I hope today in this session that you're getting a good feel of what are the different technologies and when is it good to use one versus the other is really what I hope that we could get out, our viewers could get out of this session. Other than, again, I beat you in the big data chug, and and Twisted Pine is a great brewery.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I think the final piece of that is that when you look at batch versus streaming, the jury's still out. It's not that you can pick one over the other. It's really use case specific.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be smart about it. Just because you have a hammer doesn't mean that's the right tool for the job. Maybe you need a screwdriver or a drill. Right. So, which always drives me nuts when I was in IT and I worked in these companies and people are, no, I only know my ESB technology. Therefore, I'm going to solve all my problems. I'm just going to make a data service for that, and we're going to chunk through that 1 million records with my data service. Hey, good luck. Yeah. Good luck with that. Versus, you know what? My point of sale system has, transactions coming in. I need to look up data over here. Great. You need an API. You need a service. You need a message bus. You need these things. Perfect. Or, hey, I got 10,000 sensors coming in with data. And how do I handle that? Within 30 minutes, I got gigabytes of data streaming into my database or into my system. How do I handle that?
Exactly.
Right?
No,
So
you're dead on.
there's clearly different tools and different technologies to be used, and you should really look into what is your use case.
Yep.
Because clearly you should know that.
Right. You should.
You should start out with the use case, not start out with the hammer or the drill, and go, hey, where do I go with this?
Well, and I think a last piece to hit on that when trying to make this decision is, as you can't force fit it either. I might want it real time, but if the data already exists in a database, I might be able to do some change data capture off of it. It's not like it's going to be as real time as you want.
Exactly.
So I think that's probably the takeaway out of this episode. Outside of there's a lot of things. Obviously, you can tell there's a lot of different avenues and routes you can take with this. Is that it's not a one-size-fits-all problem. It's certainly each one has its own reasons for being there, and hopefully organizations are still recognizing the need for both.
Absolutely. Cool.
So, this is where we normally sign off. As you can see, Mark has destroyed me on the beers today. I will admit
Cheers, Nick.
Yeah, cheers on that.
Yeah, this was a fun one.
Yeah, right.
We didn't talk about this one much.
Yeah. Well, we didn't, though. Again, highlighting Mark having whipped cream in his beer.
Yeah, this is a pumpkin pie beer with whipped cream on top. It was...
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you really want it, we could have stopped at Starbucks. You could have had your spiced latte.
I should.
And
yeah, that would have been nice.
Right.
That would have been nice. Yeah, no. The whipped cream kind of ruined it.
Yeah.
But hey, they offered it. It sounded good.
Yeah, no, I think it's been great. Again, everyone at Twisted Pine Brewery, thank you for letting us record this episode. My name is Nick Piette.
I'm Mark Balkenende.
And we'll catch you next time.